Good morning and welcome to Between the Trees Business Talk presented by Woodlands Online. This is your place for all things the Woodlands area as it relates to business and our local economy. We are so thrilled to have you with us today and even more excited to have not just another guest or another organization, but one of our biggest partners in the community as it relates to business, Mr. Jevon Gibb, President and CEO of the Woodlands Economic Development Partnership. Jevon,
Good
it's good
morning.
to see you back, sir.
Thanks for having me. It's been a year and a half. Haven't kicked me out yet.
They have not, and I guess we're still the new kids on the block. We'll hold that title until it's no longer convenient.
I was told this morning I'm no longer allowed to use that. I have to actually pretend like I know what I'm doing.
Well, pretending's good. No, it's good. It's awesome to have you here, and it has been. It's been a little over a year and a half.
Yeah.
Good to have you back. All things settling in, and we're on our way. And so, for those who don't interact every day or really understand, tell us a little bit about you and the EDP and what you all do over there.
So the mission of the Economic Development Partnership is to win deals, solve problems, and set the table. When we say win deals, it's to bring in the next generation of companies to the Woodlands area. Looks a lot like a broker. We are not a broker. Our job is to help brokers, help developers, help other people close more deals.
Sure.
How do we work with them so that we bring these businesses in? Solve problems is to figure out things like utilities, infrastructure. What are the things that we need to do as a community to be more competitive so that we can close more deals?
Sure.
We're not a think tank. We're not going to spend our time reflecting on what possibly could be in the Woodlands. It is how do we work behind the scenes such that we close more deals?
Absolutely.
And then set the table is, hey, we're not just a social club. Yes, we get together, we drink some beers, have a glass of wine, but it's to bring the right people around the table, to bring the right business leaders around the table so that we can solve problems and win deals in a way that, we talk about that. This is 3 gears in the machine. And so long as we have those 3 gears spinning, we do more together, we win more together, we set the economy forward together.
Absolutely. That's awesome. And it's good to note because so often the misconception is that you guys are going out recruiting businesses, talking to people all around the world, honestly, but coming back and the setting the table is the literal set the table. But it's like y'all don't own buildings, you don't have land. It's truly bringing the community partners together to make the magic happen.
Right, and that's where, yes, we're going out and we're doing things that look a lot like a landlord broker, or even some tenant brokers, to have those conversations with businesses. But then, how do we work with Entergy to talk about our electricity capacity? How do we work with Centerpoint to talk about natural gas? How do we work with the Woodlands Township to talk about permitting timelines? There's a lot of things that we can do that increases the success rate for everybody. It's the rising tide that lifts all boats.
Sure.
Where, if you're a tenant broker, man, you are feeding your family based on how many deals you close. You don't have time to work behind the scenes with your utilities provider for 3 years
Right.
to figure out how to get water to a site. That's not your job, nor should it be.
Yeah.
That's why the community invests in an economic development organization that does that work behind the scenes, again, to be the rising tide that lifts all boats.
Phenomenal. And it's, that, by the results, we're doing a lot of that behind the scenes and have lots of folks looking at us, investing in our community and bringing those new businesses. So, we're about halfway through the year now where we've gone into this year. What are kind of some of the headlines, both for our local economy and for business development recruitment in our area?
We talked about this a little bit at your Economic Outlook conference. For businesses, there's cautious optimism.
Sure.
A lot of cost management. There's actually been some workforce cuts in some of our largest employers, energy and chemicals. But they are optimistic about the future. And I think, I'm not the Dallas Fed, I'm not these economists, but there's a lot of people smarter than me that are looking at profits are strong.
Yeah.
But due to increased productivity, people can achieve those profits with actually workforce cuts.
Sure.
So we're not seeing the expansion in office demand, in office footprints. We're actually seeing those shrink. At the same time, though, the market is healthy. And so we've seen overall employment growth as you see increased demand in things like restaurants, hospitality, entertainment. The concern is those are lower paying jobs. They're still great jobs for those. So we're still trying to understand how this new market dynamic plays out in terms of how much office space or what kind of office space is demanded, and in terms of what sort of footprints we're going to see from our big employers in chemicals, energy, and those kind of related sectors.
Absolutely. And that is an interesting dynamic because oftentimes it feels like, at least as you said, from layman, the economy is a little easier to figure out. But this right now, it's
confusing.
Yeah, it is very confusing because you do see employers kind of holding back a little bit. But when you talk to folks, there is that huge amount of optimism. And overall, folks are doing pretty well.
Hey, your
Relative to their
401k
business.
is probably doing great right now.
Yeah, it's just this interesting dynamic that we have right now where there's no clear cut answer. Well, um, speaking of, we know that based on you all's report from large employers earlier in the year, looking out, healthcare remains strong in our area. Um, are there places where we're seeing particular momentum right now in terms of job growth or job slowdowns?
I mean, one thing to note is when we look at business recruitment and the kind of projects that are active right now, almost 70 to 80% of those are industrial. Now, that's everything from a distribution center through data centers,
Yes.
but it's also a lot of light manufacturing.
Yeah.
For us, a notable thing is energy, clean energy manufacturing.
Sure.
But that's 70 to 80% of the market.
Wow.
For the Woodlands, typically when we think about the township, we think a lot about office. That's about 10% of deal flow right now. The majority of our office activities actually churn from existing tenants, existing companies. Sure. So that doesn't get serviced by somebody like me. So when we look at the kind of opportunities that are ahead of us, it's a lot of manufacturing. And so people would typically say, well, that's not us. Like, I guess we're going to have to sit this year out. And what we've said is, no, we shouldn't.
Right.
What we need to figure out is, how do we get that manufacturer to set up in the periphery and then put their headquarters or their office in the Woodlands?
Absolutely.
We've seen a couple projects recently where the initial kind of request or the initial inquiry goes out and it looks like they need 50 plus acres. And we say, well, I don't have 50 plus acres, right, but my neighbor does. And so what we do is we talk with the neighbor, and it's throughout Montgomery County, and say, hey, do you have a site for this? Because there is an office component.
Absolutely.
And so if I can get that office component and get 50 to 60 employees, that's great.
Yeah.
Because what that means is if I can get their 100,000 square foot manufacturing facility, that's $50 million invested in the regional economy. Mm-hmm. But when I get that headquarters, I get sales tax. And so what we need to communicate to people is that sales tax, the Woodlands Township gets about 2%. Yep. It's about 6.25%. This is me getting really nerdy. 6.25% goes to the state.
Yep.
We get that back in various forms. But 2% goes to the Woodlands Township.
For sure.
So when you've got organizations that are generating $10 million in sales, I'll take 2% off of that every year.
Absolutely.
I'm public school kid, but I understand that's about $200,000. Right. In, every year over year, you start stacking some companies. Yep. That's how we generate some serious revenue that allows the township to do some of the amazing things that it does for this community.
For sure. And 50 to 60 employees, right? So now that's 50 to 60 new neighbors. That's 50 to 60 new people that get an opportunity to shop and invest in our local economy with, whether it's at the grocery store or at Market Street or the mall or, in any number of our restaurants or any of those things, and are able to contribute to fulfilling the vision of this place, right? Yeah. The mission of the place that we all call home. So where it goes way beyond that. And, realistically, I think that we are positioned as the Woodlands area to we are the catalyst, right? We are the hub. And so that opportunity to help and to make sure we're getting a portion of a project here, maybe they're doing some other things out, but having us as the center where everything flows through still matters. It matters quite a bit. Um, so the first half of the year is gone. I know you guys have done it because I've heard about them. But what are some of your big wins? What are the things you guys most excited about that happened in the first 6 months?
So our biggest project is going to be AB Energy USA. That's an Italian energy company. They make these kind of container on-site power generation. They look like the big container box that you'd see on a train. That's to get uninterrupted power for users that really need that. They're about $1 million a pop. So if you think about a company that needs to sell 20 to 30 of those a year, that's going to be great for our sales tax impact. In addition to those employees, really highly trained, highly skilled folks that are going to benefit the economy. But we also get the small companies.
Yeah.
So Yale Energy is a Turkish energy company coming, setting up a sales office. It's about 4 people now. They're going to grow to 10. That's small, but that's not nothing. We stack up 5 to 10 of those a year over year. How many of those grow? One of our big success stories, and it's from last year, so it's not in this 6 months, was Jack App. And it's, for the jack of all trades, general contractors using an app to work with their subcontractors. Sure, that starts at 10. Their goal is to grow to 60. They'd like to grow to 500.
Right.
Well, maybe they do, maybe they don't, but let's win enough of those so that eventually we have a large enough portfolio so that when something hits, they came here. They chose to be in the Woodlands when they get that 10x growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Which is important because, it's good to be home, right? You are home base, and that growth we hope will happen right here in our own backyard. And so you mentioned it a little bit, but, as you're out and companies are looking at the Woodlands, just kind of reinforcing for folks, what types of companies are those? I mean, we've got energy, you got innovation and technology with Jack App. Are those typical of what we're seeing nowadays?
Yeah, a lot of what we see are energy, chemicals. We do see some biomanufacturing and life sciences. Look, it's the greater Houston economy. The differentiator here is that it's the energy capital of the world.
Yeah.
The distinction that we have is this executive suburb and the amazing quality of place that we can layer on top of that.
Absolutely.
So when companies are looking at the Woodlands, what they're saying is, if they're an IT company, they might look at other parts. Look, it's hard to compete with an Austin for all the software programmers and things. We might get that, especially when it's IT related to energy.
Yep.
Where we excel in this global competition for talent are those energy, chemicals, and related companies that want the best place.
Yeah.
If they're looking for the cheapest place, it's not here.
Yeah.
It's not here. If you think about our market positioning, we've got a very clear market positioning. When people want that excellent quality of place, when they know that they need some of the deepest talent pools, when they want to recruit for the top talent, that's when the Woodlands makes sense. And that's where we've got a real clear value proposition.
Absolutely.
But it's also one of the things that you and I talked about, which is it puts us in competition with the best of the best.
Absolutely.
How do we compete against an Alpharetta, Georgia, against a Carmel, Indiana, against a New Albany, Ohio, at the same time that we're competing against Sugarland, Pearland, CBD? We've got to understand how to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time in order to create this competitive niche and opportunity within our market.
For sure. And I think that points to, the fact of how in sync even we organizationally need to be, and then in sync with our community, because it is a group effort, right? It's like these folks go out and they're looking for all those things. But if we're to compete with all of these other communities, what other advantages can we bring? And harmony is one. When they know that they're walking into a team that speaks one language with one voice, heading in the same direction, that kind of matters. I think that catches the attention of, executives who are looking to locate or relocate somewhere.
Well, and we've talked about, look, there's no hero ball.
Yeah.
If I'm bringing in a deal, I know that they've got their own broker. Yeah. I've got a developer here. The developer has a landlord broker. We've got the county, we've got the township, we've got you, we've got others. Yeah. We've got to align all these things. And that's again why I say part of the mission of the EDP, it's not just win deals, it is set the table, because we're not going to pretend to be that broker. How we help Howard Hughes or how we help JLL or Newmark close more deals is by bringing all of these people to the table, getting us aligned so we've got that harmony, so that an employer knows when they decide to make a 10, 20, 30-year investment in this market, it's going to be a market filled with good team players.
For sure. And that was the point. Kind of, we were on a panel together a couple of weeks ago, and that was sort of our message to folks was, we want to be champions. Nobody cares about being superstars. We want to be champions, and we'll play as a team and not have to, get glory and credit. It's just like, let's just make it happen, which is phenomenal. Well, as we look at those things that are kind of impacting us, one of the things that kind of enter the conversation are, mobility and infrastructure. In your world, how important are things like transportation and parking and, connectivity for our future developments?
They're critical for multiple reasons. One, you've got the quality of life, quality of place element. Companies choose their location based upon quality of place. So if we're competing with an Alpharetta, my goodness, Atlanta traffic is awful. And you think about that commute or the drive to the airport, because a lot of executives need to get all around the country. For here, if we say it's 25 minutes to go from your headquarters to an airport with access to both Asia and Europe, that's a real differentiator.
Absolutely.
And it's something we have to maintain in order to set ourselves apart from a lot of the other cities that we're going to constantly be competing with.
For sure.
The other side is to say, for a lot of these light industrial, users, they need to look at truck traffic. They need to look at how they can get trucks in and out. We also need to look at, if they're going to get trucks in and out, how does it not erode our quality of place or quality of life?
Right.
Because the last thing that we need is for a community to have its, daily routines interrupted by a bunch of trucks that shouldn't be going through.
Right.
So when we think about kind of infrastructure, we think about parking. It's a bigger picture, but it's an important one.
Yep.
And I think especially when we look at growth trends and growth projections, Montgomery County grew 45% over the last 10 years. Our current road bond is just going to catch up with that past growth.
Yeah.
We're then expected to double again over the next 25 years. So how are we investing in the infrastructure necessary to make that expansion or that growth increase our quality of place or our quality of life and not erode our quality of life? That's going to be a critical question.
Yeah, it's certainly a critical question, and I think a great understanding amongst the business community, because I think most business folks get it. Like, we have to have the conversation. We're going to have to invest and do something about it. But I think to every other citizen too, it's a critical conversation for them as well. Because, from the chamber perspective, we will certainly be at the table to have those conversations, but it's about how do we move people and product safely and efficiently to the places they need to be, their place of work, to connecting with other transportation options, whether it be the port or the airport or what have you. How do we move all that stuff and do those things? But at the heart of it, that consideration of how do we maintain quality of place? Because I can tell you, and you can probably say the same, I don't see 18-wheelers on my commute into work in the morning. And, unless I'm leaving out to go to a meeting and have to jump on 45, that doesn't happen. How do we keep that? Now, buses are another thing. Are there bus lanes? Love the kids. Love our schools, but
Yeah. Well, and the dilemma that we've got, this is a great place to live.
Yeah.
So for many residents, what they're going to say is, I just need this to stay where it is.
Yeah.
Like, what I've got is enough. And you can't communicate to somebody, or it's not going to be an incentive to them to say, if you stay still, you will get left behind.
Yeah.
That kind of negative communication isn't going to be persuasive. But it's communicating the vision of, here's where we're going.
Yeah.
Here's how growth can be leveraged to increase your quality of life. Here's what we're doing for your kiddos.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. But we have to communicate vision for the future instead of just saying, you got to do this.
Yes.
You can't tell people you got to eat your vegetables.
Right.
And so that's the challenge that you have. That's a challenge that I have. That's a challenge that the people on our teams have, which is communicating to the community.
Yes.
how the future can be amazing. And that future is going to involve growth. And what we need to do is kind of meet the moment
Yep.
to make the investments so that that's an awesome future where we have embraced growth to invest in the right things. It will be different. Different can be better so long as we're intentional along the way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great message. I mean, maybe we should print that and put some words, different can be better. And I think a man named George Mitchell
Yeah.
stepped out into a forest and said those words, right? He
Yeah.
said, this is a bunch of trees. It could be different, and that different could be better. And here we sit today. So that's phenomenal. Well, as we go through and we kind of look at the second half of the year, what are some challenges that you're hearing from employers?
From employers, I think it's continuing to figure out what the office landscape looks like. We continue to see some office users downsizing. We need to figure out what goes in, what comes next. I think one of the big things that we're going to continue trying to work on, two things. One is site readiness.
Sure.
So as we think about how to attract that user that has the light industrial need and the headquarters, to make sure that that light industrial product is competitive. A lot of that happens in unincorporated Montgomery County.
Sure.
So there's not an economic development entity that is technically in charge of that.
Right.
So how do we work with the county and others to make sure that the right utilities are there, that the right infrastructure is around there, to make sure that we land that product or that project that's going to bring the office component here. The other piece is talent. One of the top factors that companies cite for their relocation kind of competitiveness is whether they're confident that they can get the workforce that they need.
Yeah.
And so that's partnerships with Lone Star, with Sam Houston, maybe even with some of our universities nearby, to make sure that as we're recruiting companies, we understand their talent needs and we can quickly plug them in. Look, for the EDP, we don't want to start a large workforce program. I've run those in the past. What I want to do is connect with the entities that are made to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's working with our kind of higher education folks, working with the state, bringing in the right grants. But I think when we think about site readiness, we think about talent. That's how we bring in the next generation of companies that fill up our remaining sites and our office, vacancies to set the community forward in the future.
For sure. And I agree with you. That's a key point. It's funny. I think around 2012, 2013, Jim Clifton over at the Gallup, wrote a book, and one of the core tenets of his book was those communities that have talent win and will win in the future economy, which he was talking 10 years ago, 15 years ago about the future, saying those who have talent win. It remains the case here. And we are well positioned for that, right? With our public schools, our private schools in the Woodlands area in South Montgomery County, and then our partner, universities here, whether it be at the community college level with Lone Star or Sam Houston up the state as a regional, Texas A&M, University of Houston, Rice. I mean, we're surrounded by geniuses. I mean, University of Texas is a little far, and I don't know.
I was going to say I have to say such nice things about Texas A&M and hook them, baby. Like football season is coming.
Right.
It's coming. I can't say nice things once fall is around.
I figured, that we had to get that in to make sure that people knew that there was that relationship. Now, I will also mention that in order for us to get out of here today, there's an Aggie standing by the door, but it's okay. We can all play nice when we need to. But it is, locking in with those university partners and keeping the eye on the ball for what's next. And they are really doing a good job. So you're right. It's understanding, because they're huge organizations that have all these places to plug in, like what's the right plug in, and then get that pipeline going right back here to get that talent that you need to support your work.
And it really changes how economic development works. There is a quote in Area Development Magazine, which is kind of one of our big periodicals, talking about the era of cost optimization is over. For a long time, it was about incentives.
Sure.
And so for economic development professionals, we worked as incentives dispensers. When you think about Amazon HQ2, that was the biggest just incentives play we've seen, and that was at the height of that game. It has changed so much.
Sure.
And now when it's about site readiness and it's about talent, we have to work in the system to work with community colleges, to work with higher education, to work with utilities, to be this multiplier that can help plug people in and make this work. It was a lot easier when it was just about handouts,
Yeah.
but now it's about connecting the community, but it's the work that we need to do to win.
Yeah, absolutely. That's phenomenal. Well, you know, as we look out and we talk about casting that vision, and I think we've talked about a bunch of it today, but you know, over the next 12 months, 24 months, kind of beyond, what are some of the biggest opportunities for our area? And, you know, where do we go from here?
I think it's how we win together. Um, I don't see the office market changing substantially
Right.
unless interest rates go down. And the circumstances that would be required for interest rates to go down aren't good. That would take a massive stock market crash or the economy changing.
Sure.
So given this market, it's going to be continued activity in these industrial projects that have the headquarters component. In order to do that, we have to play nice with our neighbors.
Yeah.
I will tell you, it's been interesting as a new guy, you know, to the Woodlands area, from Texas originally, but understanding the dynamics between the Woodlands and Conroe, between East County and the Woodlands, or West County, Magnolia and Montgomery, the more that we can cooperate and collaborate, understanding that we have taxpayers that we have to respond to, we've got funders that we have to respond to, we will win together.
Absolutely.
And the opportunities for the economy are going to be in that industrial, that manufacturer, but the manufacturer wants office. And when they have to recruit for the top talent in the world, and it doesn't matter if you're, you know, in a chemicals manufacturer that needs to be located out in Willis because you might make dirty stuff or you might have emissions issues. You need your top talent in the Woodlands, because if they're not here, they're going to be in Wilmington, Delaware, or in other beautiful places.
Yeah.
So you've got to have it all. I mean, for businesses right now, they've got to figure out how to have it all. And if there's any place in the world that can do that, it's right here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, you know, I talk all the time about, you know, our area and how we were built on vision. We were built on innovation. We're built on never settling for status quo. It was always push the envelope to see what's next, to see what's better. And I think that's what our EDP is doing right now. Our economic development partnership is looking at what is next, how you accomplish the big things. And we have the unique opportunity, you know, to continue the legacy of not settling for just okay, to always be the best. And I think we're in good hands with you doing that.
Because different can be better.
Different can be better.
There we
And
go.
so I really appreciate you joining us today. This has been informative and I think very eye-opening for me and for hopefully everybody who is watching today. Anything that you want to close with?
I tell you, as the new guy who can't call himself the new guy anymore, after 18 months, what I just say is, you know, thank you to the community. You know, has greeted my family with open arms. We've had a new baby in the last 18 months.
Absolutely.
Things have been crazy, but it has been awesome to become part of this community, to work for it, to serve it, and to work with you, Aaron.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it, sir. And it's always a pleasure for us to get to work together. And, you know, we look forward to the incredible things that are going to happen. And, you know, honestly, I feel like us working together, working for this wonderful community, this is the absolute best place on earth to do business, to live, to work, to play, and to pray. And so we'll keep trying to make it that. And we'll move on to the next chapter with lots of great things. So thank you for joining us today. Thanks for all the work that you all are doing over at the Economic Development Partnership, keeping the vision moving and keeping business moving in the community. And thanks to each one of you all for joining us today. We are appreciative of the work that you do, because without the work that you do and the investments you make, a lot of the work that we do is kind of meaningless. But so you're the key, you are the heart, and you are the reason why this is the absolute best place on earth to live and to work. And so thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, and we will see you next time between the trees. Have a great day.